Welcome into the Tour Coach, everybody. I'm your host, Tony Ruggiero. Thanks for sitting in. If you're passionate about the game of golf, you love the game of golf, whether you're a coach, a teacher, or a player, recreational golfer, touring professional, aspiring to get better, I think some of the information you're about to hear can help you. These are the conversations with the people that I meet, the coaches that I teach with that I find interesting, the caddies, the fitness experts, mental coaches, or players or students that I meet in my journey to help all of you play better golf. And these are the conversations we have. They're authentic, they're real, you'll laugh, some will make you think. All of it is designed to help you play better golf. I hope you enjoy these conversations, and if you like these, look, you can always go find more of our content, which is available for you on YouTube, on DewsweeperTV. That's at DewsweeperTV on YouTube. All of these, you can watch the video, but you can also watch some of our productions where you can watch us go one-on-one behind the scenes with a real player as we all work together to help people play their best. So check out DewsweeperTV. Please keep listening to the Tour Coach here. I hope you like the conversations. I'm enjoying putting the stuff out, and I enjoy this journey helping all of you play better golf. And once again, though, none of this would be remotely possible without our long-time sponsors, especially Cleveland Shrixon Golf, Mitch McConnell and McConnell Automotive, Buick GMC, Bushnell, Stokely's Midtown Garden Center, Taylor Martino and Rowan in Mobile, all of the great sponsors, and especially our new one, because there's going to be some fun nights ahead, Epic Western Tequila Drink, coming at you live from Texas. So appreciate our sponsors, appreciate all the people that sit and chat with me, and we're going to look forward to bringing you more tour coaches and more content as we help all of us play better golf there on Dewsweeper TV. All right, so Tony Ruggiero here on the Tour Coach. We've got a special, this is going to be a little special weekend for us. We got a great group of folks in. We're going to work with them on their games. We got two of my compadres here, Coop, Donald Coop Cooper, longtime PGA Tour caddy, major winning caddy, Will McFadden, young pro, who I've taught since he was in 6th or 7th grade. Still remember when he showed up in those little checkered pants that they make you wear at St. Paul's, those houndstooth.
The uniform.
Yeah, still remember that showing up on the tee. And my good friend Matt Rudy, I remember the first time I met you, but this is a great story, Will. I got pissed that I didn't get named to the best teachers in Alabama, and I looked up who the editor was, and I wrote him a scathing email, which probably wasn't that scathing.
I didn't know this.
But for me, in the limited use of the English language that I have, it was pretty scathing. Sent it to Matt, because he was the editor at that point, and he sent me back a very nice email, and he was like, hey, you made some good points, blah, blah, blah. And we became friends. We started talking. So Matt Rudy is down here hanging out with us this weekend. We're doing some stuff. We're shooting some content. We're hanging out. Thanks for joining us here in Little Golf Dorm. How you doing, bud?
You know what? I'm all right. This is a nice little trip. It was 38 degrees in Connecticut when I left, so it's come down when it's a
little. It actually was for Florida, it was a tad chilly today with the wind, but we won't complain. I mean, I'm still wearing shorts.
You guys got down to 60 degrees or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So, what are we going to talk about, Matt? Look, I know I'm the host of the Tour Coach, but I feel like I do think we should have 2 or 3 conversations during this about rock and roll music. And I'm going to start this off by just saying that I don't think that Rod Stewart and Lionel Richie are in any way, shape, or form in the same genre.
Other than both of them don't play rock and roll.
Anybody that watches or listens knows I'm a huge Rod Stewart fan. I think Maggie May is one of 4 or 5 greatest rock and roll songs of all time.
which is
He's never heard Enter Sandman.
which is an amazing feat considering it's not a rock and roll song.
It really is.
I think so. If I listed the top rock and roll songs, I would put "You Can't Always Get What You Want." I think is up there.
I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who that is.
Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
I think Maggie May's up there. One we haven't talked about, and I know where you're going to say this, but Like a Rolling Stone.
That's Bob Dylan.
So
not rock.
I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Tina Turner.
So you've picked 4 songs now, none of which, I mean, they're all ballads. So we've now established that your four of your 5 favorite rock songs are either mid-tempo or slow-tempo ballads.
So this will shock people. I'm a very sensitive man.
Okay, let's move on.
I think if you can qualify something as rock music or not, depending on if a club would bristle at you playing it out loud on a speaker system in your car.
That may be why he don't like rock and roll, because it'd be like a jerk at the top or something.
It's probably it.
I think that's it.
That's
He likes
it.
that smooth flow.
Easy listening.
Poetry.
They call me easy listening to you. Cyndi Lauper, pop. I'm just going to keep randomly thinking of people through the whole thing. And
None of them are rock. None of them will be rock.
We already said Madonna was pop.
Mm-hmm.
Although I remember.
To bring these names up when you're talking about rock and roll.
What about the
Like
first
a
time you
knife in
saw
the
the
spine.
Madonna Playboy?
I didn't think she was a rock and roll musician. I like the rock and roll. I didn't think she. No, rock and roll never came to my mind in that sense. Rocking and rolling did, but not in that sense.
So Matt, what are we going to talk about golf-wise?
I think this is an interesting time in the season because, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with the Live Tour and the PGA Tour wrestling for what this is all going to look like. You got the tour trying to get back to what a traditional quote-unquote season looks like. And I think we're kind of getting closer to having an off-season than we used to have.
Which is nice for us teachers, caddies,
Yeah. So,
for sure.
So I think this is an interesting time for everybody, for caddies, for players, for coaches, because I think it finally does present some time where you can work on stuff without trying to build a plane while it's in the air.
I think from a teacher perspective, I'm just going to speak on one specific player like Andy or guys that, Coop and I, several years back with Lucas, like now the ability to have an off season like Andy had surgery and you don't have to play till January is a huge advantage. I think we need an off season. I think, everybody's sitting here as sports fans. We've been sitting at Hurricanes watching baseball, football, like every other sport has an off season.
Gives you a chance to miss it.
Right.
And too, I think it holds off some injuries.
Yeah.
Or gives you time to build up what is hurt. I think this is the beginning for these guys. It's an event in a sense. How you treat your off time right here, right now, up to when you do start is like the biggest event of your life. Get on the couch, you ain't gonna do shit.
Yeah, it's the only time of the year to make real changes to your body or your swing.
And again, it's the only time to rest.
Right.
So you gotta,
And you look at like the NFL, like Will and I were at the Saints game last night, and hopefully the Saints are going to make changes and fire Dennis Allen. Hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast, or if he does, he listens 10 times and we get extra plays. But the off season in the NFL is when they make changes and they decide to do something different, or they make a change to their approach. Like,
They also get healthy though too.
and they get healthy. But like in golf, up until now, like there wasn't that. I remember years.
we used to have a good off season. And when the tour
Years
championship
ago.
was the last event,
Right.
and we had a good off season.
But, like the years whatever it was, from 13 to 19 with you guys and Lucas, we'd finish the playoffs and you'd have 2 weeks off and you're in Napa, then Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't ever a time, 1, to get healthy, 2, to sit back and really kind of evaluate what did you do well, what did you need to work on. And I'm not saying in this situation that we were in, we would ever want to make any kind of big changes.
Right.
But
But other camps may want to.
right. And to me, that's not how other major sports do it. And I do think that's one good thing Liv has done is there's a real off season. And I know from some of the times at the last event I was at, Timo would, walking with Phil, and he's like, some guys may want to play more, some guys may want to play less, whatever, but like we have a real off season, so you got some time to go prepare and get ready for next year. If you're going to have surgery or whatever it is.
Like to take it away from golf too, that's time with your family at home.
Right.
You can't match that anywhere.
Well,
Bring them out on tour, whatever. It's not like being at home with your family.
I also think it perpetuates the advantage that the best players have. Because number one, they can pick their schedule. A.
True.
B, they can play 24 events and be fresh. Whereas a newer, younger player can't always pick schedule.
Right.
Probably has to play a lot more events.
For sure.
And so all of a sudden, the run up to majors, the way you get your body ready, the way you prepare for those tournaments, the more experienced, more successful players have fresher bodies. They've played those events more often.
I've always thought about that. They go in way more fresh.
So everything is already conspiring to be in the advantage of the better player. And I mean, I don't want to argue about the economics of it because I think broadly tours want to see stars win a fair number of events. But I do think that for a sport to perpetuate, there does have to be a bubbling stream of new players coming in who are getting chances. And the disturbing thing that I'm seeing with any of the tours, and Liv is just as guilty of this as anybody else, although they're getting publicity for doing some of the relegation stuff. I think what the perception is that shrinking the sizes of fields, making these things about the 50 most famous players in the world, I think is a very narrow, short-term focus. Because it's easy for us to sit here and say who the 50 best players in the world are right now, but if you want to talk about Victor Hovland or Ludwig Oberg, any of those guys, if you asked us this question 6 years ago, they're not on anyone's radar like that. But the only reason we see that, or the only reason we see Scotty Scheffler in the light that we see him in now, is there was a mechanism for him to go from playing at the University of Texas to going and doing it for a year on the Corn Ferry Tour, to going and struggling for a year on the PGA Tour, and where we were probably doing a podcast talking about when he would win for the first time, then getting a chance to win, then getting a chance
It's
to
almost
play.
like you forget about Scotty ever.
Yeah, I mean,
Ever struggled.
right. So there's I think Tiger and Rory to a degree, and Jordan Spieth, the way those careers shot out of the gate, I think has spoiled people about how this really works. I mean, you guys have seen this for years and years. The reality in most of this is that it's a spiky kind of a development where you work your way into this sport. And my fear is that the way it's being reorganized is that development plane is really difficult for anybody to get on. And then, if the stars get to be 2 years older, 5 years older, 10 years older, and and you're not replenishing it, I mean, just look how unforgiving Formula One is. The minute you can't do it anymore,
You're gone.
you're gone. And I think golf probably needs
It's a lot like that.
it probably
needs to
needs
be
more of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think
It does, yeah.
example I was going to use based on what you were talking about is like Wyndham Clark. He's a top 20, 30 player, whatever he is now. And he was vocal about elevated events. He was for them now that he's in them. But 12 months before he said that comment, before he won the U.S. Open, he wouldn't have been in them. Right? And I think, I do agree with that, the whole idea. I think there's got to be, I think one of the things that we mentioned this at dinner at Hurricanes, boy, they'd be a great sponsor. I think that I think people want stars 95% of the time, but once or twice a year, they want the Bob May to play Tiger.
Right.
But they also, we collectively, I worked in golf media 30 years. Collectively, we sometimes forget how stars are made.
Correct.
I mean, obviously Tiger was a star before he was a tour player, but that's not really the way it always works.
Right.
I mean,
We need a Michael Block.
yeah, I mean, but Victor Hovland could be walking through the mall when he was a college player at Oklahoma State. He could walk through a mall and nobody would know who he was. And then a couple years later, he made $25 million. So there has to be a mechanism to create stars, and that in sports, and the reason the NFL is so popular, I think is sad to say, is that the shelf life of an NFL player is relatively short. And there's always got to be a mechanism to get more players to come in and to generate more stars. And because they know this, and obviously quarterbacks can last a little bit longer, but because of the brutal nature of the sport is designed to continually import more stars. And golf, I think, did that pretty decently.
But now
for a
the
long
stepping
time.
stones, I think, have been discovered.
They've been
I
discovered. I think
think
that's
you
a
can
good way
never
to put
get
it.
any better than those days out in the desert, PGA West. That, in my opinion, brought
Really?
Best
Talk
players.
about what you're talking about.
to the tour. How the players get on tour now. I used to think that the Q school,
See, I
Out
think
in
the
the
old
desert.
Q school was the best.
that's what I'm saying, the best. I think the best players out of that group, were really good players. Not just, you say, how did that guy do it? And not to cut down talent, but today a lot of guys come out and you're like, where did he come from? Because you haven't heard of him. But I think that it's just the stepping stones are scattered now. It used to be, this is what we need to do to play on the tour. Now, I mean, you do know exactly what you need to do. There's guys that don't even know what to do.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I didn't know what to
It
do
changes all
up
the
until
time.
about 3 or 4 months ago.
Right.
I had no idea.
Always changing.
But we were riding down, or not riding, we were in a Spirit Air.
That's
We
riding
advised.
on air.
But, we might as well just take and play with a bunch of chicken
Okay.
and a couple cows. But not our sponsor, Spirit. If they wanted to, we'd edit that. But like, we were talking about something, and he was like, well, hey, if you win first stage, do you get PGA Tour American status? I don't even think people know all the avenues.
Right.
Whereas I think when it comes to like NFL and stuff like that, there's very defined.
It's
ways
always
you
the
get
same.
there.
It's always been the same.
Right?
It's like I asked you over the summer when it was time to sign up for Q school. I missed by a shot at America's Q school, and I couldn't remember if top 30 at America's Q school got you advanced past pre-qualifying. Tried to look it up, couldn't find
So
it.
many avenues.
Here's another part too: is the rules change from year to year,
That's my
Right.
point. Yeah.
right?
exactly.
Which makes
It's
it
different
confusing.
year to year. You don't know what to do.
Yeah, I think too, if you look at the money that's gotten infused in golf in the last few years, I think the people around golf, I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say this, there probably isn't one.
No,
But I mean, golf has always been a relatively niche sport. Not regional, but the footprint that golf occupied, with the exception of some major championships and the sort of the Nicklaus and Palmer kind of stuff. Golf is a relatively niche sport, and there's been this massive infusion of money into it, and a desire, I think, to create a much bigger sport on par with the NFL, on par with the NBA,
Right.
on par with Major League Baseball. And all of a sudden, when that becomes the intent, some of the mechanisms that might have worked before, when there's less attention on the sport, they don't work the same way. I mean, just look at what's happening with the Ryder Cup tickets.
Yep.
The folks from the PGA of America have just come out and said, we think we're a tier 1 event,
Right.
so we're going to price the tickets like it's a Super Bowl,
Keep
$750
changing, right.
ticket. And it's hard to argue with the economics of that, but at a time when the sport is engorging itself in money and the players are paid more than they've ever been paid, and they're playing in an exhibition where they don't get paid, and then you see how much money the PGA of America is earning from this event. The optics of it all are terrible.
And that's
And
it.
it's just,
That's it.
I think it's an amateurish way of organizing the sport, and I think part of that is because there's so many different entities that are
Correct.
involved in
Yeah.
trying to.
And that,
Let me, so I could, and I could be, and I don't even have a ton of knowledge about this. You could argue that's about my instruction too, but like hockey. Hockey is a niche where the people that love it are fanatical about it.
right.
And their
Fight
playoffs
for
are phenomenal.
Right.
And even invite fringe people that aren't hockey people to watch, especially like when it gets to be game 7,
Yeah.
right? like to me, golf was that way. Like with the majors, you'd have Tiger or you'd have somebody in
It
it,
used
right?
to be that way.
Right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being a sport like that,
No.
right? Like hockey is a beloved sport. Is it as big as the NFL? No. And I don't know anything about how hockey's operating or whatever, but like it seems like hockey's okay being hockey.
Has a better backing, in a sense.
And you might know more because you're
That's
from
fair.
Michigan and I know you follow. But like I'm saying, like, isn't it okay to be hockey?
I think it's okay to be hockey, A, and B, I think what draws people to this stuff in general, whether it's hockey or not, is seeing, you can see where the stakes matter.
Yeah.
And I think what sports are learning painfully is that the money by itself is not what makes it matter.
Right.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, the money's great. And I'm sure
For
Scotty
sure.
Scheffler is thrilled that he won
$41
$41 million last year.
It's a
But
good year.
but you could see the emotion
Great
that
year.
came from winning the gold medal, for example, which has nothing to do with money. And the emotion, was it Siwoo Kim who didn't win the prize? It would have gotten him an exemption
Right.
from military
Right.
service.
Tom Kim.
Or
Tom
Tom
Kim,
Kim, sorry. And so you saw Tom Kim, the emotion of what he didn't get by having this happen had nothing to do with money. And that might not be the best comparison, but it's an example of, when you see the play, physically the players lay it on the line, for example, in the NFL, why it's such a big deal when teams tank early in the season because
Like
the
the
players
Saints.
the players are putting their bodies on the line for it, and it's much more than the money. And I think where baseball got into some trouble through certain recent periods is when the focus became so much on the free agency money,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
conversation became so much about the money. Don't get me wrong, the players should get every dollar they can get. But when the conversation is millionaires arguing with billionaires about who's going to get more money, that ultimately I think is going to turn people
No
off.
good.
Well, I
And with
think-
golf, that's what the conversation is
I
about.
agree.
And I think that's been the case with Live versus the Tour from the public, and you've had very public, conversations with guys like Rory, and they're on both sides that said like, if we're going to keep talking about money, it's going to run the public off, right? And I think whichever side of the Live argument you're on, I teach player on Live, and I've been to a bunch of Live events, and they're run great. I got no issue with them, and I think the players that play that are very happy.
Tony, do you think that there's being out on tour caddying for years and years and years, I can almost promise you I've heard a Live player say, I haven't played this game for money. But now they do. You know what I mean? Golf, when I grew up playing golf and all, it wasn't about money, it was about trophies. That's what we were told.
Also, there wasn't any money.
Right, there wasn't any. It's all about
Well,
money now.
but I think
Everything
all the
related to
golf
golf is related to money.
Matt and I, in a convoluted way, we had a conversation like instructions changed too because of
Sure.
money, right?
Right.
Like I got into teaching 20-some years ago because it's what I always wanted to do, and I was around a bunch of great teachers, and I had one that took an interest in me. That, to be honest, like I'd probably be in a gutter or something if he hadn't, right? No, pretty close.
Jay,
But I'd have fun. But and now I've been very fortunate. People like Matt, people have been around me, and I do okay. But I got into it because I loved coaching and I loved the game of golf. But I think the money and the infusion in it has drawn people to it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm not sure everybody's doing it just because they love it
Well-
and because,
Well, I mean, we talked about this earlier over at Old Palm. If you're Scotty Scheffler and you made, call it $50 million, $41 million in prize money, call it $10 million in off course, conservative. If you're if you're making $50 million in revenue, that is a fair sized corporation.
sure.
And so the idea that a fair sized corporation like that wouldn't have a bunch of employees, and have a bunch of, have a team to help run that, and that team wouldn't become more professional, I think that's what the money is doing. The stakes are so much higher that you can't afford to just go, oh, you know what, forget it, we won't hit balls today, so the coaching is becoming more professionalized, the caddying is becoming more professionalized. All of that is, I think, in some important ways very good, but if it sort of pounds some of the character out of the sport,
Right, that's what I was
if it means that there aren't differences among the players, if there aren't players that dress differently, if there aren't players that swing differently, if there aren't some guys that use a lot of coarse language and some guys that are, super religious and some, where it's evident when you're watching it, it's no fun, I think, to watch 50 robots who all do it the same. I think it's almost like you're casting it like a TV show and you want to have a different character.
So in your years out there, how have the caddies changed? I've seen it just in my years, about 10 years ago, but how have the caddies changed?
Fit. Like, they don't show up with hangovers. We used to show up with hangovers because they wanted us to listen to our stories and stuff and occupy the day. Now it's, who wants to hear that you went to the gym? Nobody gives a right.
Because everybody did.
Right. I mean, we walked past the gym too. The bar was on the other side. But, I mean, people are probably wondering why are they talking about this now when the subject was all season. It's getting back to, like, if I was him, I wouldn't know what to do today in golf.
Yep.
And you probably know your next step, but back in the day when I was caddying at Q school, they knew if they didn't make it at Q school, you had to work on the next year, basically, play your web or whatever. I think now people are just playing to go straight on tour without the web to step on.
I also think that in fairness to how good instruction and development and all that, and you and I had this conversation walking around Caesars the other night. We were in Caesars casino. We did not
Beautiful
gamble.
redone.
Unbelievable redo. They'd be another great sponsor.
Yeah.
And we didn't even gamble, which is probably why they wouldn't sponsor. But we were. What were we talking about? Where was I going with this?
Caesars.
I know that.
Y'all were walking around.
We were talking
The
about
stepping stones and the
Oh, yeah.
Shit, I lost my train of thought. It was a dandy though. But I just say, like, he knew.
We're talking about not knowing
where you're going, right? And like now these guys,
we were talking about junior golf and why junior golf, the upper echelon in junior golf has gotten so much better.
Because the coaching's so good, they play against the best players, and now I know where I was going. Like these kids and these people now go from height. I think they have great instruction for the most part. They have all the tech. Everybody has tech. And more importantly to me, like at a young age, they play way better golf courses with this AJGA stuff. And they play against the best players, especially if you get really good, you play against the best players from around your region for sure, or around the country. Yeah. And so when you get,
you're around better.
then you go to college, and like I'm 53, so when I went to college, like you played mostly in your region. I mean, some schools traveled some, but they didn't do like they do now.
Yeah, but there's another piece to this too that's important. When we talk about this at dinner, this is not to slight.
Was this when we were talking about Rod Stewart being one of the greatest rock and roll singers?
This is not to slight men of slight frame, but Corey Pavin and Justin Leonard and guys like that who are in their mid 5 foot range.
How would you rate Corey Pavin as a ball striker?
I can't do that because I mean.
But the other big thing though,
I like to rate Corey Pavin as a player, as a whole. He was great. Today he wouldn't exist.
But if you think everything you just said about junior players is accurate, then if you add in the fact that Tiger created a professional career path where you could be the 100th best golfer in the world and make a whole lot of money.
Yes.
All of a sudden, there's a choice between being a free safety in the NFL and playing professional golf.
Correct.
So you have people that are 6'2",
Right.
215 pounds playing golf when it used to be a lot of times the players that couldn't physically play other sports. I mean, there's obviously exceptions.
Yeah, but think about it.
Would tackle
Before Tiger, would Brooks Koepka or DJ play golf?
I mean, they might have played for fun.
DJ would have played probably,
But
because he, that was his deal.
But the physical specimens that are in golf, in comparison to before, there's
Right. Well, I mean, could you imagine in the 70s with Johnny Miller, just the old names? I was at home not too long ago, it could have been months, but I just looked at the TV since I don't work hardly anymore. I'm watching television, golf happens to be on it, and I look and there's two kids I mean, teenagers on there, like, taking over that week. I don't know where that was, but wasn't even tour members. Could you see that happen in the 70s? Walking up there, they're smoking cigarettes, going, who's this 16-year-old? It just wouldn't happen.
Well, that's what I meant. I think these kids play against the best, play on, when I was in college, you didn't play Olympia Fields in a college event, right, or whatever. Or there wasn't as much access to that.
That was the no denim part, right?
Yeah, very much no denim. And I was in a small school, St. Mary's University, STMU Rattlers. But I think the kids that come out now, they've played against whoever the best players at their time are. I don't think they're as scared. And they've played great golf courses. And you have instruction and technology where, like, I know stuff we do. Will, you've been part of it. Matt, you've been around it, obviously. Coop, like, we bring our good juniors around. And, like, I remember when you were in college and you came to Frederica and Coop was there and you played with Lucas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's more of that now.
I mean, back in the day, that would never happen because you didn't travel.
Right. And then I think, too, the equipment side, whereas these Titleists, Strixon, they're fitting and giving kids that are 13 the best shit in the world.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and they can get paid now too.
And they can get
And
paid.
when I was that age, I would be lucky to have two of the same brand.
Yes.
Well, and this has changed even since I was in college 2 years ago. It's like now you can win a college event and get into a PGA Tour or Korn Ferry event, or you can win a junior event and get into a PGA Tour or Korn Ferry Tour event. Like that, my first 3 years of college, there was one tournament that did it. Puerto Rico, it was a college event. You won, you got into Puerto Rico PGA. And now, shoot, there's like almost tens of them that do it now.
Yeah, in an event, in a week, there's like a lot of sponsors and conventions are now.
Where if you win a college event, you get to play in a tour event. It happens almost every week.
And I will say the PGA Tour is trying with this PGA Tour University.
Yes, very.
And the way that they've adjusted the rules over the last couple of years, they do recognize, seemingly, that having a pathway for good college players.
And I'm in no way saying what they do now is wrong. I just think that it's different.
I just think that's why the really good players are so much better. I feel like we were talking about juniors in season. Why the best juniors are so much better
As good as
than
they are.
they used to be. Like, why are they ready to play on tour?
But let me ask you this, like PGA Tour U and how they've upped it, isn't some of that a reaction to what Liv did with the money, and they're trying to ensure that the best young players still stay going to the PGA Tour versus, a young guy like, the name escaped, the kid that went to Tennessee that plays for Brahms, Caleb Surratt, unbelievable player, right? Went to Live. I think some of what, and I think we're just talking about the ecosystem in general, but like some of the changes that the tour has made that people like us or anybody sitting around would say, oh, this is good, is a reaction to what Liv did.
Yeah, and for the first time they've had a competitor that made them do that.
Which is why the free market.
I also think that we're in the middle of the boat turning around in the harbor, so it's going to look messy.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is the sort of disarray phase, and it turns into something.
That's a great analogy.
That is a good.
Better.
That's
But,
good. Like you've written before.
but
You ought to hear Lessons from the Legends. It's probably one of his greatest masterpieces.
I think we should put the audiobook out.
I think
We should. We should do that together. Can we do that?
We
Is
can.
that
Can I get
possible?
a free one?
We can.
You can.
I want to listen to it.
It'll take you one good bowel movement. It's 92 pages. That was our goal when we went into it. Could you?
But I
How many pages?
92.
Nice.
I want to hear more. I think what fascinates me is about in the broadest sense, the math that it takes to be a tour player. And I think the way players, just as we've been discussing, the way players play now and what physically you need to be able to do to play tour golf. I wonder if it changes the way, for example, the way you guys work together, where the reality is, let's just think about a rookie year. We talked about Smiley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is a good rookie year now?
And
PPP card?
yeah, and it would seem that peaking for a tournament or going for every shot trying to win a tournament is way more important than consistently making cuts. In terms of if you were going to work out the math of what a more successful rookie year would be like. It used to be that if a rookie played 25 events and made 18 cuts and had a couple of top 10s, that's a solid developmental step. Whereas now, Scotty Scheffler had a fantastic rookie season broadly. He won a bunch of money, didn't win a tournament, and the perception was that he struggled that year. So I'm curious, when you're trying to work on your game in this off-season time, what does that look like? Is that putting the cart before the horse and you're just trying to play better golf? Or is really the strategy now to try to learn how to go for more shots, how to play
I can answer that, but I'm going to let him.
Play aggressively, because you could make the argument that playing aggressively all the time is the way to do it.
That's what the stats guys
because you got to win. If you win,
I also think it depends upon the player.
Of course,
right?
That's why it's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
See, so I think that's the job of the teacher. Duke's running for a touchdown there, close. But I think it depends. That's the job of the teacher and the coach, is to know. Like, I think each year, we talked about some stuff today about adding tech and different things. Like this time of year, I try to look myself over each of my players and say, like, what did we get where we were wanting to go? Did we not? What didn't I do as good of a job? I try to be overly critical on myself. Like, how did I not do as good a job as I could have?
Mm-hmm.
And like using their skill sets. Like, what do we have to get better at or maximize for them to get where they're trying to go? And to your point about everybody hitting it far and all that, an athlete, like, obviously, you guys have been around me a bunch, like, so getting them with Colby or Aaron or Morgan is a big part of that puzzle, because like being able to move and as strong as you can and flexible and mobile and stable enough is a big part of that. That's where I think like one of the biggest things that's changed, like, is my development as a teacher, is like,
you can find the weaknesses.
and we actively talk about not playing golf but going and getting in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
If that's their
Right.
but some of them you may see are a little weak in the mind, so then you would turn them over to Greg.
Yeah, right. And there's people, like, there's a lot of different ways to get better, right? And there's guys that, like, hey, I mean, you played good, you hit it good, but like, on weekends you didn't play as good. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe I mentally wasn't as good as I needed to, or whatever. Maybe I didn't handle stuff at home, or whatever the deal is. But like, that's our job. I mean, as you interviewing teachers and writing articles, is like, our job's to find like which part's missing for the guy to get wherever he's wanting to go. And you said something I thought was really interesting. We were sitting in the old palm at the golf studio. Like, I think sometimes people read articles or they listen to our bullshit, they think like everybody wants like to be Scotty Scheffler. And like, not everybody's gonna be that way. So like a great year or a good year for a guy may not even be getting a tour card. It might be that he got full PGA Tour America status. Or like, if you're talking tour players, it may be just a guy that didn't have to go back to QC.
Right, or found somewhere to play.
Right?
Latin America.
Like, I forget how you phrased it. I should remember. Like, it was like, not every person's one of those top 10 or 50 guys. I think we lose sight of that.
Not every person that even could be a great player has to be.
Yeah, I mean, as a person in the media, not to pile onto the mainstream media election, but in the media, our job is to find heroes and tell stories.
Right.
So that certainly gets wrapped up. You get wrapped up in that part of it, which is trying to tell the Superman, Superwoman, hero, heroine.
Or maybe
story.
you're focusing too much on someone that you think
and
doesn't happen.
And it's a self-perpetuating kind of a situation too, because I mean, you can slap anything on a website that's got Tiger Woods involved in it, and it gets a lot of traffic. People want to see that.
Right.
So you've got to try to figure that out. You know, are we running a bunch of Tiger Woods stories because that's what people want?
Right.
Or have we conditioned people to just respond to that kind of
You
thing?
remember
as
Ty
opposed-
Tryon?
Sure, absolutely.
And I think the outside world killed that, his talent, in a sense of what was put on him.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean-
I don't know the situation that great, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
so much pressure.
that's part of it, and the pressure at a young age. Michelle Wee, I think,
Yeah,
went
yeah.
through the same kinds of things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things you can identify there where you say, all right, I mean, that's why you have parents. You know, I mean, when you're 15, 16 years old, that's why you have parents. But certainly in media, certainly in social media, things that are novel and different and exciting.
Get you fired.
But those stories, when something is different, that's exciting.
Good.
And so you want to tell those stories. But for me, I want to see how this sport, in comparison to some other ones, can come up with ways to continue to generate new, interesting people to talk about. And I think some sports do that much better than others.
Right.
And
That's a challenge for Liv right
and
now.
I think that's, yeah, I mean, the Liv is able to attract people because they can pay, but they need to come up with a way to make those tournaments matter in a way that's different than just paying a bunch of money.
Well,
Because if you give John Rahm all the money in the world, and John Rahm wins the trophy for
Yeah.
winning, if he wins the season-long thing for Liv,
So he does it 5 years in a row.
I'm sure
he's bored.
it's a great thing, but there isn't any way to get around the fact that you're watching a guy who already has $250 million win some nominal amount more money.
Right.
And that's not the same as Tom Brady, who's won X number of Super Bowls already, but still climbing the mountain again and winning the Super Bowl because of how much care we've invested in what the Super Bowl means for
Right.
a long time.
And the
Right.
tour, over however many years it's been, invested all that money and time into what Bay Hill means, what Pebble
Yeah.
Beach means, what players, Hartford or whatever. But I do think one thing that Liv has done, which I know from experience, in particular the one event I went to overseas, Spain, is taking golf to areas
Sure.
that golf is big worldwide
Sure.
that hasn't had it, and bringing stars. I didn't go to Australia. I've heard the secondhand accounts from Andy, Caddies, all those guys, right? Like how crazy the Australian event was. In people's words, it was as big as any major over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Spain. I went to Barcelona, which was a fantastic golf course. It was beautiful because Spain crowds were equal to or as good as any regular PGA Tour event I've been to, right? It's as good as a Bay Hill or as good as whatever. And I think that's where like people have, we're talking about like finding niches. Like I think they've got to find a niche. And that's where like I do like, and I'm not saying every live event was this way, but like being there and watching Sergio win in Spain
Oh, yeah.
was very important to him. And more importantly, those people that were there cheering him, they were going crazy, right? Like it was a big deal. So like, I also think in all of this, in the golf world, we got to, and I'm guilty of it too, and I was, but like, got to not look at it just as what's going on over here.
Sure.
Like I do think I think the niche for Liv is to take stars and their golf. They got to figure out some of the back end of stuff, and if they could get more developmental players coming up, I think it'd be fantastic. But to take it to places like Spain, Australia, wherever, Italy, whatever, where like golf is, or Sweden.
Hey, wasn't that Greg's deal
Right.
to start with?
I think that's their niche.
Sure.
Like I don't think playing in Chicago
Does anything?
when the Cubs and the Bears are playing.
On a public golf.
Right? And I went there, the golf course was in great shape, and I know they had good turnout, but like, I'm just saying, like, I don't know that that's, if I was them, where I'd go.
Right.
I know Nashville is like a huge city, young crowd, doesn't have another tour event, or ever have professional golf, and they had a huge turnout,
Right.
right? Like, I think that shows you, like, that there's a market for bringing great stars. I know from growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, graduating high school there, that when the PGA came to Shoal Creek, and they have a Champions Tour event there now, but like when that PGA came to Shoal Creek, it was a massive,
Right. This is
massive
like
deal
Augusta.
because it's a
I mean-
big golf town but only gets it every now. You know what I mean? Like I think that anyways, that's what.
Well, I also think too that you have to be cautious sneering at something that Liv is doing, because everything has to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
You know,
They have an idea.
the first year of anything, whether it's the first year of a tournament, the first year of a career, you know, it's real easy to look back and say, well, I would have done this differently. I mean, those guys had the courage to go try something different,
Right.
and you're not going to get it all right, and you're not going to get it all wrong. I mean,
And you're never gonna, really.
right. So I think that's a cheap shot to say, oh well, the crowds are smaller. Oh, look at the TV ratings. Well, okay. I mean,
Look, I've been to Barbasol in Auburn, and their crowds were small, right? Like so, that's what I'm saying. Like I think.
Well, the other half were dead from the heat. They were there, you just didn't see them.
I mean, I think that your
was
point about
fun.
your point about Sergio in Spain, it makes sense, and it's why they constructed the teams the way they did. You know,
And that's what I think they should do.
to capitalize on
Agreed.
it. But
They should take advantage of that.
if all that is at stake, I mean, that really just proves the point. Because whether Sergio had won $8 million for that, or $800,000, or $80,000,
Wouldn't matter.
it would have been a big deal for him to win that tournament.
Correct.
It was big for
Right.
him no matter
And
what.
so I think Liv paid the money because they needed to pay the money to get players to do it. But
If I'm the 7-Eleven and I'm trying to open and I'm trying to take the best guys from the Circle K, I got to go pay them.
Oh yeah, you gotta give away free coffee. You do. You got to do
Right.
something to draw them
and
to
you
you.
need Phil Mickelson out there saying it's the best coffee in
That's
the world.
right. That don't hurt one bit. But you're right, they have to market on what's strong for them, and that's.
I do think they made a strategic decision to attract older stars, you know,
Yeah.
brand names, and I think they've done some good things, grabbing some young college stars, and I think that's money well invested. But and I wrote about this in a big story in Golf Digest. I think it remains to be seen. Like if you're, you know, Caleb Surratt is a good example. What's a better development? Ultimately, what's a better developmental path for what a player's doing? Is it what you're going through right now, and going to Q school and playing in these high stakes events where it matters if you make it or not? It matters the dollars you make. It matters the dollars you don't make. Versus getting a guaranteed contract like Caleb got and having that money in your bank account. Obviously, that's great for a player to have that money, but it also changes the way you approach developing your game. I think you could make a pretty strong argument that it is ultimately better for a player to go through what you're going through, or a player to, for example, be the player of the year on the Corn Ferry Tour and win tournaments. Look at the guy who just won on the tour last week. He got the Battlefield promotion from the Corn Ferry Tour.
Oh yeah.
And you just-
McCormick.
That's the bad thing.
And
I
so-
don't even know.
The year he played on the Corn Ferry Tour, and the development that he got out of playing in all those events for less money, but having to win tournaments, got to the PGA Tour by getting the Battlefield promotion, and he's ready to play PGA Tour events. I think there's a lot to be said for going through that path. Just like there's a way to develop, like Jaden Daniels has in the NFL,
Right.
in comparison to what Anthony Richardson went through.
Right, two different avenues.
Correct. And so the talent can be the same, the skill sets can be the same, but there's value to starting 30 more games in college football than there is
Right.
not to not.
Right.
And so I understand that it's a product, and you want to have good TV, you want to have good golf on TV, and have charismatic stars, but you also want to be generating players that have 10, 15, 20, 25-year careers that you can track, and they're
Yeah.
growing all the way through.
Right.
I
You can see
think, and I think from the player perspective, though, a lot depends on what does the player want and where they are. I mean, I know from Andy's perspective, like as far as, you know, he didn't have much status anywhere or opportunity when the live thing came up, and so he wasn't in any events, and they gave him a chance to go play.
Sure.
Why wouldn't you go do it? I mean,
Right.
you'd be an idiot, and
Right.
for being penalized for that, I think it's bullshit.
bullshit.
And then,
Well, I mean,
and then
I understand it. I understand it from the
Those-
tour's perspective.
Right.
But then, you know, he went overseas and he won 3 times on Asia and he earned his way back, right? But like, you know, I'm saying like not every player, I don't know Caleb very well or whatever, said hi to, you know, dining or whatever, but like not every guy, like, does a guy want to play majors and win majors? Is that what they're doing it? Or is it a guy who wants to play golf, he loves playing golf, and he wants to make a real good living?
Right.
And I think, like, I used to always think everybody want to be the guy who win majors, and I'm not. This is not like a generational, like, my kids, they're weak and they're soft. But, like, I know for people that work for me, to be totally honest, like, some of them don't want to be great. They want to make a good living, they want to have a bunch of time off, and they want to do what they want to do.
Which is okay.
Which is totally okay, but it's not how I was brought up. I thought you were right. So, like, this is probably more a question for you because you've
I
observed
think
so much.
that's a newer thing.
But, like, so.
Because there's the luxury of,
Right.
you can make a living.
Right, like,
being
so is
okay.
it okay?
Exactly.
I mean, are we going to have a bunch of kids coming up? They're like, hey, I don't need to win majors. I don't even need to play that. If I can make a couple $100,000 a year and play a little golf, do a little this, a little vacation, have a little this, man, that okay?
Well, I don't want to pick on Kevin Na, for example, but I mean, Kevin Na had a completely journeyman PGA Tour career.
Right.
He made an enormous amount of money going to live, and he's had a completely journeyman career on live. And I'm not saying that with a sneer on my face, or I'm not criticizing him at all. He probably made every decision
Did
correctly.
he retire?
But I mean,
Did he retire from golf?
I don't know if he retired or not, but it seems like he did.
I think he did. Or
And-
No,
that's
he's
what I.
old.
But he was. Oh no, I'm sorry. I read that Kenny. Yeah.
But to your point, I'm sure, and again, I'm not
But I
criticizing
think
him.
that's a generation.
He might be out there grinding, trying to win the PGA Championship next year. I don't know the answer.
Right.
But it's hard to argue that the financial decisions he made weren't the right ones.
Right.
Because no matter what happens,
He's taking care of it.
he can pay for the extra meat at
Right.
Triple
I mean, you take Harold Varner.
Yep.
I think one of the reasons Harold didn't catch any backlash was he was completely open and honest and said, this is generational wealth for my child, my wife, and my
Sure.
extended family. And I grew up in North Carolina, rural North Carolina, and African American, and if, you know what, we didn't think I'd grow up with the opportunity to have this, and if you got a problem with it, right?
You know, a lot of people, they say money don't, buy happiness, but it damn sure makes you not argue about the lights getting cut off.
It's true,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It makes small problems easy.
I mean,
I mean, Brooks Koepka said, with the injuries that he had suffered,
Right.
he wasn't sure what the long-term runway was like. That taking the live money is essentially collecting on the insurance policy before he
I
retires,
still think,
which is okay.
I still think one of the greatest things I heard was in the Netflix deal when DJ said, if you, basically, I'm paraphrasing, if you went to anybody else in America and you told them that you could make twice as much as you're making now at your job,
And work.
but you only have to work half the time, every
Say
single
no.
person would take.
No one would say no. He's right.
But you could also argue that if you're marketing a new league, that might not be the message that.
Right, no, I get
Right.
It's 100%.
That may not be the sponsor. for it.
Right.
But anyways, I think we covered a bunch of good topics.
But yeah, I mean, we did talk about the off season, and it got to where golf is now. There really isn't one right now. They're working for one.
And I think an off-season would be good. You said it
I think we
earlier,
need it.
make us miss it.
Yeah, I think
Right.
we need it.
It makes the important events stand out more.
Now, didn't the PGA Tour go to the point system basically because of NASCAR was
Yeah.
doing it?
They wanted
Look at NASCAR now.
They wanted to
I don't
make-
know anyone that watches NASCAR. Not to cut the sport down. I used to know tons of people.
Yeah.
So, maybe they didn't do the right thing.
They wanted to make it a playoff system to make it evident who the player of the year
Right.
was. But
I knew when I was a kid who the player, without
wait,
that,
you mean it didn't come from watching an event where somebody started with a 10-shot
it
lead?
came from people's mouths.
Yeah.
Did you see so and so play? But no, it didn't come from that.
I just think, and I think we're evolving towards also where there'll be, I think the whole missing it thing, and I think like when we had a real break, the skins game was cool to watch,
Yeah.
right? Because you hadn't seen golf in like
But
45
When you
days,
saw everybody either at Sony or the desert, it was a good welcome.
right? Yeah,
Now it's
same
almost like, I'm sure had Caddy in a couple of years or whatever, but I'm sure it's almost like, just turn around.
I mean, didn't Xander Schauffele say at the President's Cup that he was thoroughly, he's played a lot of golf.
Wiped out.
It wasn't,
They need a break. Yeah. So we need a break.
We need a break, guys. Matt, thanks for hanging out this week. It's gonna be fun. Willie Mack, thanks for hanging out, helping, pitching, and getting me from New Orleans here. Coop, love you, baby. What would I do without you?
Love y'all. Love the crowd too. Thanks for watching. Listen.